Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is a name that evokes a lot of nostalgia among kids born in the 80s and the early 90s. What started in 1984 as a comic book became a household name with the popular Saturday morning cartoon in just a matter of 3 years, followed by a full-fledged video game 2 years later. Come 1990, and it was time for the Turtle Mania to hit the silver screen. Fans of TMNT will agree that the original live-action comedy Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and its sequel, TMNT 2, The Secret of the Ooze, are among the best films in the franchise, but they could not connect with the third film in the installment. Why? Well, let's find out in this video. But before we dive deeper into the details of what happened to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, we have a small request. Please consider subscribing to our channel if you haven't already. It is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Now, back to the video.
This could hurt.
The budget betrayal. How cost-cutting killed the magic. There was a lot that went wrong with TMNT 3, Turtles in Time, but the biggest bummer was the budget and silly cost-cutting that affected the film's overall look, or let's just say, the Turtles' look. Following the unprecedented success of the original 1990 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles film, which made a whopping $202 million return on investment on a rather modest $13.5 million budget, and the somewhat scaled-down but still decently successful sequel, subtitled The Secret of the Ooze, released 1 year later, which almost tripled its production costs, the producers were pretty sure that the TMNT craze was slowly fading away. However, they wanted to squeeze out every million from the Turtle Mania while it was still alive. That's why New Line Cinema and Hong Kong-based Golden Harvest jumped the gun and came out with a disaster of a sequel that was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 in 1993. Well, not exactly a disaster per se, because the film did make twice its budget, but when your precursor has made 15 times its budget, it does make you a bad successor. But what made TMNT 3 so bad that it almost killed the franchise and a possible fourth installment is the production economics and the film's underwhelming budget. Golden Harvest and New Line pumped $21 million into a project that dealt with time travel, and although $21 million might not seem small by any means, especially for a film produced more than 30 years ago, it is still minuscule for what the film demanded. Unlike its predecessors, which were set in 1990 New York City, or maybe an approximation of NYC's skyline, because both the films were mostly shot in Wilmington, North Carolina, for tax benefits, with just a few shots taken in NYC's famous locations, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 was set in the backdrop of medieval feudal Japan during the year 1603, with no map, no New York, and of course, no pizza. The four turtles were not going to feel at home. The time travel gimmick warranted that a big pizza pie of the film's budget be spent on recreating feudal Japan from centuries past in modern-day Astoria, Oregon. And yes, all those medieval Japanese samurai costumes also didn't come cheap. But what came cheap were the costumes of the four turtles and a half shell. To make up for all the expenses lost on the lavish sets and costumes, spending needed to be cut elsewhere. And what better place to cut costs than the Turtles' costumes, eh? The producers decided to replace the fantabulous Jim Henson's Creature Shop, which had created the beloved animatronics for the first two films, in favor of a lesser-known company called All Effects for the Turtles' costumes in TMNT 3. Oh, and yes, Jim Henson did die soon after the premiere of the first film in 1990, but his Creature Shop is still in business and continues to do fantastic stuff. So why did the producers opt to go for the All Effects company? Well, because it was the cheaper option, and most often than not, cheaper options make cheap stuff. So the costumes did look cheap with visible seams and those weird spots which drew the viewer's attention to the turtles' armpits and groin area. And honestly, it made the turtles look more frog-like than turtles. And despite the technical limitations of the costumes of the first film, which caused the radio signal-controlled mouths of the turtles to go into eerie spasms from time to time due to interference with a nearby airport's radio signal, the animatronics of the sequel, The Secret of the Ooze, were improved with the costumes seeming more flexible and easy-moving, and the issue with the radio signal sorted. The animatronics in the third film were simply subpar, to say the least. The original costumes created by Jim Henson's shop looked convincing with all the believable crinkles and creases that looked more natural and even had a ton of electronics hidden in the shell to move the lips and keep the actors cool. A lot of fans also say the color was also a bit off, and need I say about the weird, lifeless stares that the turtles give in TMNT 3, like they're sucking out our souls? Another place where costs were cut was Corey Feldman's fees for being the voice of Donatello in TMNT 3. The former child star was paid a measly $1,500 for voicing Donatello in the original 1990 film, despite its $13.5 million budget and the phenomenal $202 million box office collection. Feldman was absent from the sequel, The Secret of the Ooze, due to a drug possession charge in December 1990 and was replaced by Adam Carl. But when Feldman returned to voice Donatello in TMNT 3, he was denied a raise from his teeny original fee of $1,500 and was reportedly told, "Yeah, but you were in rehab," when he asked for more money. That's just disgraceful, despite knowing how better he was at voicing Donatello. Time travel trouble, when creativity goes wrong. Sometimes moving away from an established idea doesn't go down well with the audience. And that's what happened when the director and producers of TMNT 3 decided to implement a time travel plot instead of just sticking to a more conventional Stop the Shredder type plot. Instead of being a continuation of TMNT 2, The Secret of the Ooze, or bringing an entirely different storyline from the comics to life, TMNT 3, which was subtitled Turtles in Time, chose to follow the crowd and do a time travel fantasy inspired by films like Back to the Future 3 and Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. However, this decision made TMNT fans feel alienated and confused because it was a far cry from the true essence of what made Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles so relatable to the fans. TMNT stood for fighting crime in New York City, not saving a time-traveled April O'Neil from the hands of a cruel Japanese ruler and his English arms dealer in ancient Japan. New York is for TMNT what pizza is for Michelangelo, and you just can't imagine the Turtles living anywhere other than the underground sewers of NYC, surrounded by all the high-rise buildings of the 20th century. Moreover, the idea that April buys a magical scepter at a flea market as a gift for Splinter that accidentally transports her back in time to feudal Japan and replaces her with a banished Japanese prince called Kenshin who takes her place in the Turtles' lair, the 4 Turtles being body swapped by 4 samurai henchmen from feudal Japan, and if that wasn't enough, the body swapped people swap clothes and are of the same size and body mass. Equal mass displacement in the words of Donatello. All in the name of creativity? I mean, come on, give me a break for Christ's sake. The Villain Void. Missing what made TMNT work. Another area where TMNT 3 failed miserably was in establishing an iconic and memorable villain. The absence of an iconic villain left fans more disappointed than surprised. Shredder, who was the arch rival of the Turtles in the comics, was the villain in the first film, and the Turtles also fought with his clan of ninjas known as the Foot Clan. Fast forward to the second movie, the main villains were Shredder, again with his Foot Clan, and his 2 newly created mutated henchmen, Tokka and Razar, who were quite the additions. But despite the TMNT universe having a ton of other memorable villains in the likes of Krang, Baxter Stockman, or even Bebop and Rocksteady, the director and producers decided to go with a Japanese daimyo, a Japanese warlord, named Lord Norinaga, and an uninspiring English pirate-cum-weapons dealer called Walker, who supplied weapons to Lord Norinaga and collaborates with him to gain power in feudal Japan. Despite Norinaga's cool headgear and Japanese fighting skills, he is not the main antagonist in the movie. Rather, he plays second fiddle to Walker, who captures April when she travels back in time. Apparently, Norinaga wants to gain authority over Japan, but is engaged in a conflict with a bunch of rebellious villagers headed by a girl named Mitsu, played by Vivian Wu, who also happens to be the love interest of his son, Prince Kenshin. Walker, being a gun dealer, provides Norinaga with all the firepower to fight Mitsu and her rebels, while using him to advance his personal motives. Not an iconic villain by any means. Meanwhile, the original draft of the film was supposed to have Baxter Stockman and his army of Mousers as the main antagonist, but due to technical limitations of the time, the idea was dropped in favor of the Japanese warlord and his English ally. Behind the scenes, director Stuart Gillard's impossible task. Making a film carry the onus of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles moniker forward is no small task. In fact, it's an almost impossible task, at least for Stuart Gillard, who has the dubious distinction of being the director of TMNT 3. While the original 1990 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles film was directed by Steve Barron, its sequel, The Secret of the Ooze, was helmed by Michael Pressman. And while the original film stuck to the gritty and violent tone of the original comics, the sequel traded the violence and seriousness of the first one for more comedy and satire in order to make it more kid-friendly. But the problem was with the third film, which neither had the seriousness of the first film nor the funny and goofy atmosphere of the second. And to top it all off, it was directed by a little-known Canadian actor-cum-director Stuart Gillard, a man who had primarily directed television series which were unrelated to both a period piece and live-action comedy that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 was going to be. Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, who are the creators of TMNT Comics, wanted a more serious and dark tone to the film, akin to the atmosphere in the comics, and they somewhat succeeded in having their say in the first film, but Stuart Gillard and the production execs did not want any of the adulting in TMNT 3, and wanted to make it more kid-friendly to appeal to larger audiences. Little did they know that the audience that was born with the TMNT mania was growing older and demanded more mature content than the slapstick comedy and irrelevant pop culture references which seemed to target fourth graders. The producers and director's vision was way different from what the creator duo had in mind, and despite their valuable inputs, TMNT 3 was a complete letdown. The franchise fracture, long-term damage, and recovery. Alright, let's jump to the conclusion. Like its subtitle, TMNT 3 sent the Turtles back in time, or at least it sent the original live-action animatronics-based Turtles back in time, to an era from which they never came back. The whole live-action animatronics Turtle mania is passé, and we're now seeing a new modern avatar of the Teenage Turtles in the form of the 2003 animated series, the 2007 animated TMNT movie, and the Michael Bay-produced 2014 CGI-assisted live-action reboot of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and the 2016 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows. But why did it take almost a decade for another TMNT product to restore fans' confidence in the franchise? And why did the franchise take a different approach and a whole new production company to get back into the spotlight? Well, that's all thanks to TMNT 3, which heralded the end of the original live-action trilogy of TMNT films, even though it made decent money worldwide. Apparently, TMNT, which was produced on a budget of $21 million, more than doubled its production cost by making $54.4 million worldwide. However, despite its rather impressive haul, the film was so boring and lackluster that it failed to connect with the audiences and the fans who were so disappointed that they were losing interest in the franchise as a whole. TMNT 3 also did not live up to the expectations of the producers and the high standards of collection set by its predecessors, which earned close to 15 and 3 times their budget respectively. This, coupled with the film's underwhelming performance in its home market of North America, where it managed to make just around $42 million, made the producers rehash their plans for the future of the franchise. Also, the whole Turtle Mania thing was kind of becoming a passing fad due to the emergence of shows like the X-Men, Transformers, Power Rangers, Dragon Ball Z, and Pokemon. And also the resurgence of superhero franchises like Batman, Spider-Man, and the Avengers. All these factors made the producers dump the prospect of a planned fourth film in the TMNT live-action franchise, which supposedly did not materialize due to the dull reception of TMNT 3. The fourth installment would be called TMNT, The Next Mutation, and would have us witness the mutagen inside the Turtles reactivate and evolve them into more powerful, beefier versions of themselves. Another idea was to introduce a new turtle called Kirby into the mix. This idea was scrapped as the film didn't get made, but it did make it to the 1997 live-action TV series, where the next mutation happens to be Venus de Milo, the first female turtle in the TMNT universe. And despite the glimmer of hope that was the 2003 animated TV series, TMNT creators Peter Laird and Kevin Eastman sold the franchise, including the film rights, to Nickelodeon in 2009, which is, in turn, owned by Paramount Pictures. Both the 2014 CGI reboot and its sequel, the 2016 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows, which were made on massive budgets upwards of $130 million and made decent ROIs, are produced by Michael Bay and distributed by Paramount Pictures. The films bring back the violence and grit of the comics, but there was something about the live-action animatronics by Jim Henson's Creature Shop that made them look so lifelike and appealing. The new Turtles just look like turtles on steroids, but that's just an unpopular opinion. Maybe we can make a detailed video on this sometime soon. Meanwhile, in a 2015 interview, TMNT creators Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird claimed that the original 1990 TMNT film was their favorite adaptation of their comics. Eastman said, "I call movie 1, 1990, the best, movie 2, the worst, and movie 3, halfway in between." His assessment could be because the first film was more in sync with the duo's vision of having the original gore and violence, and a good balance of seriousness and humor. Moreover, they also cite the quality of the costumes and the fact that the original was a direct adaptation of one of the comic's storylines. Marvelous verdict. Cowabunga! Time now for our marvelous verdict. TMNT 3 is a very bizarre movie in every sense of the word. I'm not saying it doesn't have its moments, it does, but it simply doesn't make the cut of the conventional TMNT film. The below-par costumes, the bland and lifeless stares, and the whole time travel to feudal Japan plot do nothing but evoke disappointment from fans and moviegoers. And though some might argue that the movie was decent enough, it simply looks and feels like nothing more than a cheap spin-off of the original. TMNT 3 is a good example that shows how the quality of a movie suffers due to studio greed, hurried production, production economics, and cost-cutting. Judging by how the movies have fared in terms of box office numbers, it looks like the quality and the craze of the once beloved live-action Turtles is diminishing with every new sequel. But the success of the 2023 TMNT Mutant Mayhem gave fans some hope and respite that the Turtle Mania is not dead yet. We hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give this video a like and subscribe to our channel for more such fan theories, movies, comic, and pop culture content. Until next time.